Mr. Emery. All right, we will move on to the city manager's report. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I'm going to start. We're going to have Jeff Friend, who is our soon-to-become finance director, is currently our deputy, give us a presentation on third quarter finance. And this goes back in 2022 for the third quarter. Council, this is to kind of catch up as we've transferred to a new financial management system. And we'd like to sequentially, address all of the quarters outstanding and now our third quarter. But important to remember that this presentation would be subsumed quickly by the year-end close that's coming, and that would give a much clearer picture as to where we are. So Jeff's going to do this relatively quickly, but just to bring you up with third quarter, knowing that we'll get to fourth quarter at close probably in February at some point. Thanks, Jeff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Friend, Deputy Finance Director, has been stated. So this is the third quarter financial report. It's going to be very familiar looking to you as we've done this for the same format for the first and second quarters. This is the general fund overview, revenues and expenditures. The two bars, the bottom section in the green are the actual amounts, and the remaining budget amounts are in yellow on the top. So on the left column for revenue, our annual budget for revenue is about $25.5 million. And you can see at September 30th, we had about $9.8 million still remaining. And the same over on the expenditures, almost $26 million is our annual budget, and we had nearly $9 million still remaining in the budget. So we're pretty much on par there. I'm used to saying next slide, and I don't have to do that anymore. Caught me off guard. As far as budgeted expectations, these are the major, in yellow, the major revenue categories. Property taxes, we don't collect hardly any property taxes in the third quarter, so that's why that is lagging so far underneath the 75%, which denotes the 3 quarters of the year. Utility taxes are on track. Sales taxes are a little bit higher than budgeted expectations, which is nice. B&O taxes, 65% of budget. Franchise fees between 65 and 75% or 70% of budgeted expectations. Red light running revenue slightly under the 75% mark, and operating expenses is happily at 65% and 10% lower than budgeted expectations. And we'll take a look at each category in a little bit more detail with year-to-year trends. So as I said, we don't really collect property tax in the third quarter. As you can see in this chart that has 2020, 2021, and 2022 in green. We collected in April and October. So for the fourth quarter, we'll have a nice big green bar there at the end. So we are expected to, be under budgeted expectations after 3 quarters. Utility taxes. Utility taxes are slightly above prior year's levels. We collected about a little over $900,000 in the third quarter in 2022, so those remain strong. Sales taxes. Sales tax continues to be above expectations and above the prior period. In the third quarter, we collected nearly $1 million in sales tax, regular sales tax. And you can see it's much higher than the third quarter from the previous year, which is the orange bar on the Q3. In more detail, these are the categories for sales tax. They're listed in order of their contribution. So if you see the 2022 year-to-date column in the middle there, the major ones are at the top. So the increases are really driven by the big boys at the top, the retail, trade, services, construction, and wholesale. They're all up. The smaller ones, like miscellaneous, automotive, and manufacturing, are smaller categories. Those are down from the previous year. But thankfully, the larger categories are doing very well. So overall, we're up almost, it's about 10.69% over the prior year in 2021. B&O tax. B&O tax has improved over 2021 in the quarter 2 and quarter 3. One reason for this would be that we contract with Diane Marcotte, who's helping get our system act together, and we're also just coming out of the COVID pandemic. So we've been focusing on more collecting some of the B&O tax that wasn't being collected during that time, and she's done a great job. And we've also have a staff accountant who is partially dedicated to B&O tax collection as well, so then that has resulted in a little bit more improvement in B&O tax. Franchise fees. Franchise fees, they're down from the previous year, but franchise fees are also a product of franchise fee agreements. So there's always going to be a little bit of variance there. In the third quarter in 2022, we collected about $250,000. Red light running. This is one of those where behavior is improving, and that decreases our revenue a bit. We collected in the third quarter almost $350,000, so that was up from the second quarter, most likely due to schools opening and whatnot. But as you can see, each quarter, first, second, and third, the green bar for 2022 is less than the prior year. But again, you know, that's also attributable to improved behavior behind the wheel. And finally, our fund balance. So our ending fund balance at the end of 2021 was about $7.1 million. At September 30th, it was down to $6 million, but you have to remember in the third quarter, we don't collect property tax. So that's expected to drop a bit and then come back up after we collect property tax in the fourth quarter. And any questions?
Well, I'm just going to say that, Council, as we discussed during the budget process, we're strong, solvent, have a very healthy fund balance that we can draw on in emergencies, which we were able to do during COVID. So I think, once again, I think our finance department deserves a lot of appreciation for the management of the city's resources.
Questions? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. In the past, we've gotten some kind of sector-based report. Is there anything available or could be available for a third quarter? You know, I mean, like, you know, based on the different types of businesses?
Council member, as I stated in the beginning, I think that third quarter is sort of ex post. We're done with third quarter. We're moving forward. If that's something that makes sense to include in close, looking at different sector contributions to city finances, that's something we could look at.
I'm always interested in knowing which types of businesses are doing well, especially when receipts are up. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Jeff, thank you. Next, I want to just speak briefly about our ferry service, and I invited Peter Phillips to come today. He's in the audience, who's just done an incredible job as a consultant helping us with this process. I wanted to let council know that we will be bringing back to you some specific contract options to do phase 2 of the ferry service this coming year. But I think one of the things we wanted to mention was that, you know, last year I think we asked for just a blanket not to exceed about $975,000, and in the end we utilized a significant amount less than that. So we will come to you this year with the request for resources that will be, you know, much more modest than what we thought last year would provide for, even though this year what we're hoping to do is 7-day service with commuter service and for a longer period of time. And I think just one thing anecdotally that's interesting, last year, Peter struggled, we all struggled to try and find dock space on the Seattle waterfront, and eventually ended up with the Port of Seattle, Pier 66. And that was hard, and we were able to accomplish that. This year, we've had at least 4 different dock operators approach us who have an interest in having our ferry land at their dock. And that includes both the port, the county, the city, and a private sector group. So I think that the level, I mean, that's where the rubber really hits the road relative to the logistics of making the ferry service happen and the competition that exists between different uses of those docks. So I think Peter's doing a great job, but it seems to sell itself, right? So at any rate, just to bring you up to date on that, and we'll do a more in-depth discussion when we have some specific contracts in mind to move forward. I just wanted to bring you up to date. Peter, thank you for being here. And finally tonight, we're going to have somewhat of an in-depth presentation on our American Recovery Plan Act funds, the ARPA funds. And I'm going to ask Jeff to do that, and also Rochelle. And this has been a team effort, but between Eric Lane, Jeff Friend, Rochelle Sims, they've been, I think, the primaries. We've had help from others, Andrew, Nicole, I see sitting there. Our police department has been a part of this. So, Jeff, are you doing this, or? Yes. Come. What we intend is to show you what the disposition of the funds to this point has been. And then we're going to show you a slide of, recommendations to reallocate the American Rescue Plan Act resources, because there are some options to do that. And then what we want to do is come back to council in February, giving you a couple of weeks to review these. This presentation will be on the website, and I'm not sure if it's in your packet. Probably not. Okay, so at any rate, you'll have an opportunity to review these, and then we can have a larger discussion in the future. But for now, we wanted to give you kind of the status of our ARPA funds. So with that, Jeff.
Hey, thank you, Michael. So as it says, it's reallocation recommendations number 1. So as needs might change or balances remain from projects that have been dedicated to, there might be subsequent recommendations. So this is the initial one for beginning this year. Just as a bit of background, in 2021, the city was awarded just over $9 million from the American Rescue Plan Act, which we refer to as ARPA. The city has collected all of those monies. We got half of that in 2021 and half in 2022, so we've received the cash. ARPA funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, which is now next year, and expended by December 31st, 2026. So we have to spend all of the $9 million by that date. This presentation reports expenditures as a cumulative total as of 12/31/2022. So when you see in this presentation expenditures, that will include 2021 and 2022 all rolled together. Some ARPA funds may be designated for expenditure in 2023 and later. So if you see remaining funds on a program, well, we still might have plans for that. It might be committed. It is committed to that program. Allocation of ARPA funds was approved by the City Council on September 16th, 2021. And in September of 2021, also, the Council approved the creation of a general ledger fund to track ARPA expenditures. One of the most significant aspects of federal rulemaking was to allow cities receiving less than $10 million to attribute all potential costs to lost revenue. So that's significant because initially there was like 4 different categories you had to justify your expenditures under, depending on how you allocated it. And then they came out and said, well, if you got under $10 million, it's all revenue loss. And that just really gave us a lot of flexibility and freedom because we didn't have to have any kind of additional justification to the federal government. The city submitted the first required annual report to the federal government in April of 2022, and the next one is due this coming April, by April 30th, 2023. Okay, so the first programs we're going to talk about is going to be the programs that are directly related to COVID response. The first one is the tenant eviction resources. So there's $250,000 that was approved by council, and we have expended $250,000. And I'd also want to comment that I'm going to talk about a lot of different programs that represent the work of a lot of different people with the city. I'm kind of fortunate to be the spokesman for that. It's a little awkward representing somebody else's excellent work. But we're going to I'll go through and describe them. And if you have any questions, I have Rochelle Sims as my lifeline in the audience here. So we entered into a contract with Catholic Community Services beginning in January 1st, 2022. It serves residents with rent assistance and eviction prevention. As of the end of 2022, 71 households were served, preventing all households from eviction. The criteria for the rental assistance was you had to be a Des Moines resident, you had to be under 50% area median income, and you had to be impacted due to COVID-19. Rent assistance was capped at $5,000 per household. This slide has contact information. The Catholic Community Services intake line is available on Fridays from 10 a.m. to noon. The number for clients is also on the slide, as well as a link. So this presentation will be posted to the web. So if you have interest in reaching out to Catholic Community Services for this program, you can find these slides and click on the link there to ccesww.org. Next is workforce training grants. This one was approved for $125,000. We've expended the full $125,000. There's a contract with ANEW through 2024. It looks like 20 working force training and pre-apprenticeship tuition scholarship grants to be awarded to members of our community. And so I believe that contract was already, it began in 2022 and runs for 2 years. Also, speaking of contracting with ANEW, there's programs here where you'll see that we may have incurred an admin fee. And the reason for that is that there's just some areas where it was most efficient and made the most sense that handed off the program to a contracted third party who specializes in that much more than the city does. So I just wanted to make sure we talked about that when I say, we contracted out this program to somebody else, or we have a contract with ANEW. The EATS program. The EATS program, $210,000 was approved. We've expended just over $80,000 and have about $130,000 remaining. This provided relief to local restaurants serving the city of Des Moines. There's 23 restaurants and food establishments that were aided by this program. Takeout meal tickets provided to our seniors. There were 125 each week. I believe there was 113 weeks, so that totals 14,125 meals served. The program began in May 2020 as a 3-month pilot, but lasted over 2 years, ending in July 2022. So it was very successful. And if I recall correctly, it was also a model for other similar programs for other cities. So it was a very successful program. Next is the Utility Assistance Program. The city approved $250,000 for this program. We've expended almost $47,000. The program launched in March of 2022. Application requirements included a residential account in Des Moines. Request is for aid with an existing Puget Sound Energy account. So we do not have a contract with Puget Sound Energy for this, but the program is with Puget Sound Energy. It was just, I think they had a program already, if I'm not correct, and it was just easier for us to direct people there. 93 households have been approved, paying out over $46,000 in utility assistance thus far. Small business grants. The small business grant program was approved for $500,000. We've expended nearly the whole thing, $495,000, and have $5,000 remaining. So this is one, as I mentioned, is coordinated with a third-party provider, which was Evergreen Business Capital, to develop a comprehensive application portal. So as I mentioned, contracting out also involves administration of the program and setting up portals. And there's a lot of work that they were able to do that we wouldn't have to be burdened with doing ourselves. Program accepted applications through June 2022. The total amount paid to businesses is approximately $450,000. And also, the Port of Seattle gave the city a grant. So the city of Des Moines was able to utilize an economic development grant from the Port of Seattle to conduct a robust outreach effort along with services for both translations of materials and interpretation of business owners, for business owners where English is not the preferred language. And so that was, I believe Eric Lane worked on this, and that was something that he was able to bring into the program, which I think was very positive. Some statistics on this program: 45 small businesses were funded. There's nearly $10,000 for each approved application, and 149 people were employed at local businesses. So the owner business background: 69% of businesses had less than $250,000 in annual revenue. 55% of them were BIPOC-owned businesses, and 84% were businesses with over 3 years in Des Moines. So they were businesses that had been here for not just for a month. The funds that these businesses used: 49% put to working capital, 13% building improvements, 11% machinery or equipment, 11% inventory, 4% refinancing, and 5% for miscellaneous other uses. Additional COVID response programs, we have 3 that kind of fit in this category. Emergency transitional housing, which council approved for $300,000. We have not expended any of those funds. That is a large issue that the city is still thinking about how to approach that, and there's discussions going on related to that. Healthcare support, there's $200,000 that was approved by council. None of that has been expended. The city's reached out to CMAR and St. Francis, and those conversations are taking place currently. And then the last one, Enhanced Human Services Committee budget, that was approved for $75,000, and $75,000 was expended. And the Human Services Committee budget is up to its goal of $250,000, so that did enhance that budget. Okay, moving on to a new category, public safety. So we have these related to the police department. There's $60,000 was approved for an evidence van. I've been talking a lot tonight and forgetting how to do it. You'd think I would be in practice. Okay, $60,000 for an evidence van. $37,000 was expended for the purchase of a Ford Explorer. Then there was $250,000 approved by council for body cams and program consultant. We've expended about $91,000, and the equipment was purchased. Training is underway and should be deployed by the end of February. Vehicles, there were 3 police vehicles and 2 social worker vehicles that were approved for $335,000. Those have been purchased. We've expended about $182,000. I think there's still probably some cost related to outfitting those cars that might come in on that, but those vehicles have been purchased. New police officers, we have 2 new police officers who started January 1st. There was $830,000 approved for that, and through 2022, we've expended nearly $267,000 on that. Redondo Square substation lease was approved for $63,000, and so far we've expended almost $25,000. And lastly, mental health support. There are now 2 FTE positions created for crisis counselors. I believe currently one is vacant and one is filled. That was approved for $250,000, and about $70,000 has been expended. Under the umbrella of public safety for the court and SCORE, there was $550,000 approved to support the municipal court. We've expended $300,000 of that, and in 2023, the remaining $250,000 will be transferred to the court from the ARPA grant. And SCORE was approved for $250,000. We've expended nearly all of that. SCORE was not eligible, the jail was not eligible for ARPA funds themselves, but they responded to the pandemic. They had to lay people off. They made the tough decisions they had to make at the time, and so now we've been able to contribute to that to help them out with the $250,000. Okay, Parks and Senior Services. Council approved $1 million to be transferred into the Parks program for support. That has been nearly expended. The remaining amount will be transferred this year. Part of this was safety enhancements for Stephen J. Underwood Memorial Park facilities, focused on adding security by means of increased staffing. And then, of course, staffing in all sectors is still a challenge. But I just lost my thought. I'm not a talker, usually. No, so we still are dealing with staffing challenges, but the money has been transferred to the Parks program. Marina redevelopment, $1.75 million was approved by council for marina infrastructure and soft costs. We've expended about $144,000 of that, with about 1.6 remaining. And also there was marina redevelopment community presentation materials that was approved for $20,000. None of that has yet been expended. We are coordinating with consultants from multimedia materials and drone tours. Marina Beach Park People Movers. So council approved $50,000 for Marina Beach Park People Movers, and they have been purchased for $42,237, and they should be delivered next month in February. And that picture there is what was purchased. That's the model that was purchased for the marina, and it has a long-lasting lithium battery. It holds 8 people, 6 inside, and I guess 2 sit in the back, facing to the back. Environmental sustainability is a key feature of the marina, so that's why they are electric people movers. Capital projects. So we have 4 capital projects that got ARPA funds attached to them when the allocations were approved in 2021. Fieldhouse play equipment was approved for $100,000. It's going out to bid in the next few weeks, and completion is expected this year. Also, the tenant restroom, it was approved for $400,000, and none has been expended yet. The city is currently working through the design phase. And traffic calming was approved for $100,000. None has been expended. They're still in the early stages of planning on that. And then you can see $11,000 was expended from the ADA compliance, which was approved for $100,000. So this is an example of, we have remaining funds, but this is all in our capital improvement plan, so it will be expended by 2026. Metro, the Metro shuttle, it was approved for $250,000, and we've expended the full $250,000. This is the bus route from the Engle Lake Station to the Des Moines Marina District, offering weekday and Saturday service. I believe that the King County will now not need us to subsidize anything in 2023, if I'm correct. So it's a, if they have a shuttle operating, it's successful. Or they usually, where I'm from, they'll get rid of it. So it's nice to see that they have a positive route that is sustainable. Emergency Management Comprehensive Plan. This was approved by council for $8,000. The full $8,000 was expended. City of Des Moines hired a consultant to assist the emergency manager to gather information from each department to build the plan. Washington State approved the plan in April 2022, and the plan was approved by council in June 2022. Now we have just additional programs. So this is we're coming to the end here. We got the SR3 donation was approved for $75,000 to support SR3, and that was expended fully. Cool air misters, that is something that is still being worked on and looked at. That was approved for $15,000. There were none of those funds have been expended yet. The food trucks, limited term, was approved for $60,000. That's was for a consultant to see if we can attract food trucks down into the Marina District, have more food trucks, you know, as part of the economy down there. I believe that has a contract being looked at right now by the city with the Washington State Food Truck Association. Budget publishing software that was approved for $35,000. And we expended the full $35,000. We were able to use that software during the last budget process last year. So this one's a little close to my heart. ARPA administration is approved for $150,000. We expended a little over $90,000 of that, have about $60,000 remaining. That was a program for basically to help the city administer all of these the administrative side of the ARPA funds. Human resources recruitment and engagement videos was approved for $14,400. That has been fully expended, and if I recall correctly, we saw the videos last year during a council meeting, which was fun. Establish a nonprofit was approved for $100,000. We've expended $35,500 in support of nonprofits, with $64,500 remaining. And finally, airport issues support was approved for $300,000. We have not expended any of those funds, and we have $300,000 remaining. So funds available for reallocation. The EATS program has wrapped up as of July 2022, so we have $129,000 available there. Utility assistance is a program where the demand wasn't as high as what we budgeted for that. So that's nearly $180,000 available from that program. The Marina Beach Park People Movers, that has been purchased. We have a remainder of $7,763. Airport issues support has been earmarked for $200,000 to be available. And then the ARPA admin support, $50,000. And then I'll let Michael speak to this next slide, but this is about $565,000 available for reallocation.
Okay, so thank you, Jeff, and I really appreciate council. If I could only convey upon you the amount of effort that went into both doing the program and being able to account for the ARPA money. What we're recommending is to reallocate the previous slide. If you could just go back quickly, that totals approximately $565,000. And let me just walk through those really quickly. We talked about EATS, utility assistance in terms of demand, leftover money from the people mover purchase. The airport issues support is important because there's a significant amount of money in abeyance waiting to be utilized by the consultants for when the airport is able to move forward with the Sustainable Airport Master Plan, both the NEPA, which is the federal environmental, and SEPA, which is the state environmental process, and that is yet to begin. But we do have funds in there, and we felt that another $100,000 would protect us as we needed to be protected to participate effectively on behalf of the city for the SAMP. So that was why we are saying, for example, that $200,000 be available for reallocation. And then ARPA administrative support the same. We've been able to, and Jeff's done a great job of documenting all of our ARPA expenditures. And early on, with Beth Ann's help, we identified a specific new fund, Fund 114, where all the ARPA money goes in and out of. So we're able to track it from a financial perspective. So the next slide takes that 565 and just suggests a manner in which it could be reallocated. And this is what we will bring back to council in February at your meeting, I think, of the 2nd, and just have this as on the table for discussion with council as to this is something you believe you want to support or modify or change or just leave as is. But we thought we could extract $400,000 for ferry service this year, put $115,000 toward marina infrastructure, and put $50,000. The Arts Commission currently has $50,000, which covers the concerts, and so this would be an additional $50,000 for them to be able to encourage the development of art in the community. And so that's kind of the $565,000. At any rate, I think that's it, right? So that concludes. That's kind of an up to date, and you will see an agenda item on the 2nd, but also this presentation will be on the website for you to review as you wish. And then potentially we can go forward in February and have council consider modifications to what was the original allocation of the money. So if there are any questions on this, or
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Great presentation, and I thought you did well speaking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll tell my wife that.
Okay. You mean she's not watching? So this is a big chunk. Do we possibly expect that we would have another presentation like this next year that says, well, here's another chunk that we foresee won't get expended? I mean, do we think we might have something similar happen each year until our allocation period is done? Maybe not as big of a chunk, but.
Well, we have to have it committed for sure. I mean, after 2024 ends, I don't think there will be any more of these recommendations because it is locked in by that point. So, I mean, I don't know the timing, the frequency of which we'd want to reallocate funds, but I would expect after this one, it depends on what needs rise and what leftover we have. And yeah, so I guess I don't know a good way to answer that other than to say we expect to have more. I don't know what dollar amounts would be associated, and they wouldn't occur after 2024.
but let me take a shot at this.
Okay, Michael can answer.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, so we will continue to bring this to council and up-to-date numbers as we go, whether it's, biannually or annually or whatever, and let you know where we stand. And there will become a time in 2024, if there's going to be any reallocation, it needs to get done like before the end of that year. So we will, as we've tried to do, keep council intimately involved with this process and with these dollars.
Councilmember Harris.
Do you have a list of which nonprofits have received funding from that
Yes,
thing? Could we receive that?
I believe so, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes our city manager report.
All right, thank you. Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, Human Trafficking Awareness Day proclamation. Item 3, Redondo Boat Launch Restroom Facilities Grant. Item 4, Joint Use Agreement Amendment. Item 5, Des Moines Normandy Park Interlocal Agreement for Senior Services 2023. Item 6, Redondo Boat Ramp Boarding Floats Contract. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent calendar as read.
Second. I have a second from Councilmember Pennington. Is there any items a councilmember wishes to pull? Councilmember Harris.
Yes, Mayor, items 3 and 4.
Okay. Items 3 and 4. So we will vote on the consent agenda for items 1, items 2, items 5, and item 6. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes 7-0. All right, moving on to item 3. I'm sorry, I have to read the proclamation before I go forward with those items. And I'm gonna have to use my glasses because I have very small print. All right. Whereas human trafficking occurs when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to cause another person to engage in forced labor, involuntary servitude, or a commercial sex act. Whereas human trafficking is second only to narcotic trafficking in international crime. And whereas the International Labor Organization that there are upwards of 20 million victims of modern-day slavery worldwide, with children making up 27% of the victims. And whereas victims of human trafficking may be young, old, male, female, U.S. citizens, or foreign nationals. And whereas aggressively identifying and prosecuting the buyers and sellers of trafficking victims is an effective strategy to end the commission of human trafficking. And whereas assisting victims of human trafficking requires a coordinate community response among community groups, social services, schools, and law enforcement. And whereas Washington State recognizes a National Day of Human Trafficking, which is designated annually as January 11th, now therefore the Des Moines City Council proclaims January 11th to be the Human Trafficking Awareness Day. Sign this day, Mayor. All right. All right, we'll move on to item 3. Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I have one question, which is so this is an RCO grant, and we received an example for boating, and I'm sorry I don't have a more pointed question, but we're using that to build a restroom. And we're sure that this is applicable, and
yes, the restroom facility that promotes the boating infrastructure down in Redondo does fit into the category that we're applying for.
okay, so that's the sort of, that's the idea behind it, is that it will promote boating.
Yes, this is a boating infrastructure grant, yes.
Okay, I'm just saying that narrative will be in the application.
It is, yep.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve draft resolution number 22-075, authorizing the city administration to apply for financial assistance managed by the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Pennington. Is that who I saw, or was it Deputy Mayor Buxton?
Yeah, I'll
I'll
second.
take either one.
Either one.
All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor? I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris. Motion passes 6-1. All right, moving on to the next item. Councilmember Harris, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the shared use agreement between our city and Highline and the schools. And I asked a question, I did not get an answer back, but I'd like to get an idea of the mechanics, how that would work. How does the city make a specific application? What is the timeline? And are there any opportunities for other groups not directly run by, programs not directly run by the city to avail themselves of that? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Yeah.
Yeah, sort of. So we've had an agreement with them since 2014, and just in the last year or two, the Highline School District has a process for making sure all of the cities that are under the agreement have access to the facilities they need. So we utilize an online system and apply, and then other folks that aren't, part of the agreement can use it if it's available.
I'm asking at the risk of, but I have heard from groups not directly connected with the city that it's been impossible essentially to schedule anything with a school to do some kind of thing that they would like to do, their own, like a basketball game or something like that. And so I'm just, this is just surprising to me that they found it extremely challenging.
So, Councilmember, you know, that's an interesting comment. I don't think we have jurisdiction over external agencies. And, you know, if they were contacting you, I would encourage you to have them contact the school district to try to resolve
No,
their issues.
what I'm saying is that, you know, is there a mechanism for them to contact the city and become part of this program?
I perfectly understand what you said, but our responsibility is to city programs, not to run interference for nonprofits or whatever. And not that that's not a valuable function, but I would encourage them to go to the district. That's where the solution of the problem will come.
Okay, so there is not an opportunity for them to work with the city to try to avail themselves of this. Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, just if I can get a little better understanding of, is this the contract that essentially allows us to hold basketball games at Pacific Middle School and use those facilities to run essentially our sport programs?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and so this is really about us finding a place to hold the sporting events that the city sponsors, correct?
Correct, and then Highline School District also, we kind of jointly, they're able to utilize our facilities, so it's kind of, you know, the different cities that are in the agreement, and then we use their facilities too.
So if they need a big baseball field, we might get into it.
Or, yeah, exactly, if they need something that we,
Thank you,
Yeah.
that's what I thought it was, I just wanted to make
yes.
that clear, thank you.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the First Amendment to the interlocal agreement for the provision of shared usage of facilities and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement substantially in the form as submitted.
Second. Councilmember Pennington is seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. All right. We'll move on to new business, draft ordinance 22-065, related to speed limit enforcement in and around parks and Parks and Recreation, and I understand our city attorney, Tim George, now has the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Tim George, City Attorney. And I believe I'm here bearing good news tonight. And that relates to automated traffic cameras. So the state authorized their use in 2005. They limited their use at that time to school zones, red lights, and railroad crossings. And that's pretty much what we've been operating under since that time. They did set some conditions. They have to be supported by a traffic study. The cameras can't take pictures of the occupants of the vehicle, and local jurisdictions are required to create an enabling ordinance prior to installation. So in 2011, the City Council authorized for the first time the use of traffic cameras in school zones, and the first traffic camera went in on 16th Avenue in front of Woodmont. In 2016, the City Council authorized additional uses, and that was for red light cameras. And you can see the photo here is from one of our red light cameras at Pacific Highway and Ken Des Moines Road. So just recently, about 6 months ago, the legislature updated the law to allow for additional camera locations. 3 specifically, which are public park zones, school walk areas, and hospital zones. So what you have before you tonight is a draft ordinance that would update our existing ordinance that allows for the red light cameras and the school zone cameras. And it would authorize the use of these cameras in public park speed zones. And this is a new designation that was created by the legislature, which is an area within 300 feet from the border of a public park that's consistent with active park use and where signs are posted. Another requirement of this new law is that, unlike some of the other traffic cameras that we have, this law requires us to remit 50% of the fees collected back to the state, but that's only fees in excess of our administration costs. So at first we would cover our court costs, the contract with the camera company, prosecutor time, officer time to review the tickets. Anything in excess of that would need to be split 50-50 with the state. So that's the ordinance that you have in front of you. There's really not a lot to it because we're just adding the public park zone designation and the definition, as well as that one note about the penalty. Once this is approved, we'll work with our other city departments to review our city parks and adjacent streets to see if there's any areas that would qualify as a public park speed zone that has an issue with speeding. And clearly, one potential site for that would be the Redondo Boardwalk. So that will be one area that we'll be looking at immediately. That concludes my presentation. These are the motions.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
I move to suspend Rule 26A in order to enact draft ordinance number 22-065 on first reading.
Councilmember Nutting.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Seeing none? Just on 26A, of course. Seeing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor? I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Oxiger. Motion passes 5-2. Deputy Mayor Buxton.
I move to enact draft ordinance number 22-065, authorizing the creation of public park speed zones and authorizing the use of automated traffic safety cameras to detect violations of public park speed zones.
Councilmember Nutting.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Harris.
So we have ostensibly picked out I'm using the royal we, where these parks would be designated in Redondo. We have to declare that a certain land is a park.
We would have to declare it, yes, and sign it, but we have not done that yet.
I guess my concern is unintended consequences of declaring a plot of land as a park. And that's kind of my, is there, yeah, are there any unintended consequences of declaring this land a park?
Point of order, this has nothing to do with the motion that's in front of us, Mayor.
Well, no, it actually, okay, fine, moving on.
He's right. Could you clarify and be specific?
Well, declaring a public land park, I'm not sure what an unintended.
That's okay, good. Like, so when was the last time we did a speed study in the area?
I'm not sure.
So that would also have to be done.
Yes. Before we put these cameras in, we would do a speed study to determine in any location. What this ordinance does is it authorizes us to potentially install cameras in areas around parks where there's speed problems.
Right. But
That's what that does.
couldn't we like vote to do a speed study or just, give you some money to do a speed study and then find out, the extent of the efficacy?
You could make a motion to do so.
Yeah, well, not a half bad idea. I would amend this to perform a speed study before implementation of this ordinance.
Again, point of order, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal of putting cameras, is that you have to do a speed study and prove that they're necessary.
I agree.
And that's not part of what we're voting on right now.
No, I agree. It's redundant,
So-
but just for a sec, is there a second to his motion? Seeing none dies from lack of a second.
All
right.
Okay, so last but not least, is there any other option legislatively for achieving this end without declaring this a park? My understanding was that, there might be some movement at the state level to simply allow us to have a speed camera in that area without that designation, or no?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
That's okay, okay. That's it, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
A comment and a question. One thing is that this is in response to a pretty distressing public emotion in regard to some situations that we're having. So this is, we worked hard to, not just to install speed cameras, but problem solving in a sub-community in our city. Question, Tim, let's say we go all the way down the road, pardon the pun, and a speed camera is installed, does that mean it's permanent? Or do we have the option then, let's say, after a certain amount of time, we feel like the situation has been improved? Is there a way we could move the camera or remove it?
Yes, I mean, we contract with the company, and so we would look at that, the terms of the contract for how long it's there. I will add, this is all about safety. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at all of our roads around parks, and the legislature created this law to protect people leaving parks, and they don't want people speeding, and hitting kids or animals or, you know, someone crossing the street. So areas like Redondo is exactly why an ordinance like this was created, because you have lots of people, lots of kids, they're crossing streets. It's a place where people go to gather. And so we'll certainly we'll do the speed studies, and we will likely be signing that area, and we'll be working with the company that we contract with, and we would bring that contract back to the city council. But we'll look all over the city, and if there's other areas where we have people speeding and we have kids coming out of parks, and we'll look at those areas too.
Councilmember Nutting first, then Councilmember Steinmetz.
I just wanted to clarify, so it's potentially like Water Tower Park on North Hill could be looked at, as well as any of the parks throughout the city, up on the highway or whatnot.
Every park in the city could be looked at, yeah.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify. There's nothing about this statute that is location specific, correct? For this ordinance?
No, it's citywide. Any park in the city, yes.
And so we'd look at all parks, including the big park that we put together a little bit ago in Pack Ridge, or anywhere else there's a park to
That's correct, yeah. And what we'd look at is, you know, we'd look at, the definition requires it to be an area where there's active park use. So you'd look at, you know, if people are parking across the street and they're having to cross a street. I mean, those would be the kind of areas that we would look to, for an emphasis on.
Okay. And so we'll get down to specifics later on, and that'll still come to a vote of the council? Is that correct?
Yeah, the contracts, speed cameras are expensive. And so they would be over the $50,000 mark that would require city council approval.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Harris, your second.
Yeah, I don't respond to distress and emotion. I respond to data. It's like you go into the ER and you don't want a surgeon or a nurse who falls all over themselves when you bleed. You want somebody to do the right thing. And my concern is just, as with the paid parking at the marina, is that we do this, it is expensive, there is no undo key, and I want to just be able to assure the residents of Redondo that this would provide significant efficacy, because there would be nothing worse than spending a couple $100,000 and then it turns out that it doesn't actually help the problem. And I'll just close by saying that there's a guy who lives along there who borrowed a little speed board from the city for a long time, and many's the evening that I spent out there watching cars go by, roaring and creating all kinds of commotion, going about 38 miles an hour or whatever. So I'm just, I want to make sure that this will actually be efficacious, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Well, at 38, they would have gotten a ticket, so.
I'd just like to, Councilmember Pennington, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As one of the folks that was around when we did the initial red light cameras, the study that was done by the company and by the city, they aren't going to put them in if it's not going to be profitable for the company itself. That's part of their criteria. I'm sure that would be the same in any location that we might think that they would be beneficial in changing behavior. Certainly, I will speak to the Redondo area. Mr. Johnson has come for a long time, number of years, to talk about the speed down at Redondo. I used to, for about 12 years, travel that route back to my office out in Federal Way, in the morning and in the evening. And you know, it's a narrow road, it's a dangerous road, there's a lot of speed on that road. When we redid that area, we put in the speed hump or the raised intersection. There's still stuff that goes on. I've advocated to have more of that down the road as you go north. You know, so whether it's Redondo or a test or if it's Cliff Avenue, you know, we're gonna find out where the high-risk areas are. We're gonna find out where the behavior needs to be changed. And we're also gonna find out through the company that's going to be our partner in this, whether it's beneficial or if there's a different way to do that calming. So I am positive that all of your questions will be answered as we give the staff the tool to be able to do this and to work, you know, towards a safe roadway for our citizens and our pedestrians and our visitors here in the city. So I'm in support of doing this.
City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, I didn't know where to start, but I just want to mention to the council, we have Tim doing the presentation tonight, but that presentation and this whole concept is the result of working cooperatively with the police chief, his senior staff, with Andrew, his senior staff, with the community, who I don't think the community needs to be assured that we're addressing their case. I think they've made their case very clearly that they need a response, and this is the response. And it's fortunate the legislature has created this opportunity. So I think anywhere we can enhance safety around parks, which are used by children, which raises a separate issue about the bulkhead and open space, but forget that. This is something that we should absolutely do and take full advantage of in every level that we can, is my own view, and that this was a cooperative team effort. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Mathias. I would also add that one of our priorities in town is our public safety, all our parks. If we can do anything just to prevent you could talk about costs and everything else, but if one of these cameras, say, prevents the life of a child, that's worth it to me. Second, I've heard many of the Redondo residents talk about the speed there. They've talked about how they go over the bumps and then they rocket forward and not. What we're trying to do here is correct behavior, and if they're not going to correct the behavior, they're going to pay for it. And so I fully support this. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of motion 2, raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. All right. We'll go on. This is the time for new business. It's not a time for previously discussed business. This is not a time for questions of old business. Council members can submit questions or seek updates on previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to find out if there is an opportunity to partner with specifically Wesley and their TV studio, which has expressed an interest in providing more content for the city's Channel 21 and, in return, finding out if there's a way that we could help them up their game. They produce a great deal of very high-quality content that I think the rest of the community would love to be able to avail themselves of. So,
Councilmember Harris, I can tell you that the city manager, myself, and Bonnie Wilkins are discussing that with Mr. Schellenberger and Wesley. So, yeah, we've been interviewed a few times, and there is discussions of how we can integrate that together. So I don't think there's any need for a motion. I think it's in the works.
Cool.
Councilmember Nutty.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know, it wouldn't be for a future council meeting, but it would be to remand something to committee. The pandemic has produced a whole lot of bad, but out of it came some good. Secrets has been closed down up on the highway and, for a while and has, alleviated calls to service for the police department. I'd like to, have the Economic Development Committee, and I know we're just going over work plans and stuff like that in committees right now, but I'd like to have the Economic Development Committee take a look at the zoning in that area to see if we can tighten it, make it transit-oriented development, and make the possibility that site could not open again as the same site that it was.
I'm gonna support that. Go ahead, Councilmember Pennington.
I'll second his motion.
Yeah. Councilmember Steinmetz, or somebody, I saw a hand raised. Okay, so let's go ahead and on the next, when you guys meet on that, add it to the work plan and see what can be done and fit it into the schedule that works with staff. All right?
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So, since it was mentioned tonight, we did allocate $20,000 for the for the virtual Marina Town Hall idea I had, and I am about 100% certain that Skylab has a 3D rendering of their ideas. And I know that it's extremely confusing for the public to only see that 2D crow's eye view. So I would like, there's plenty of time to ask them to produce a 3D model and have it available for the 26th meeting. And I would move that we take some money out of that fund to do so.
So Councilmember Harris, first of all, it's not the Marina Town Hall. You're talking the Marina Development, correct?
Yeah, but
Okay.
the whole
And then-
point of the proposal was to allocate some fund to do
Well,
that.
and that's the thing is, if
3D
you,
rendering.
they mentioned it, it was already in the work of working with the service to do that. So I think we let staff do the job
You seem,
they already
when was this mentioned?
in the presentation. That's the way I heard it.
I heard nothing about any kind of like 3D rendering to be.
You know, you were on your cell phone, maybe that's why. Do you have something to say?
But
all right.
you're saying that will.
Anyway, it's in the process, so I don't think this is necessary, but if you can get 2 other people, then
Yeah,
we'll take it to a
really,
vote.
I want to know that a 3D fly-through that I proposed and we voted for will be available at the meeting, because I know that Skylab, every architect and urban planner and engineer on the planet uses that software.
Okay, so we got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Do I have 2 supporters to this? Seeing none, we will move on. Councilmember Roxiger, you raised your hand.
Yes, I'd like to have a discussion as to whether or not we should make the improvements necessary so that we can operate the senior center, or excuse me, the activity center as a cooling heating station during inclement weather periods.
I believe we already do that.
Well,
Go ahead, Councilmember, or City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, thank you. So, on the ARPA list, you saw misters. And we wanted to try and accommodate the seniors especially, and kids, with, some of the these cooling equipment. And one of the things we discovered, unfortunately, was that they create dampness and wet. And so if you have them indoors, it's sort of, you can't do it. And so we've been looking at ways, how can we facilitate, especially in the summers, especially the heat, what's the best thing we can do? And at the moment, it doesn't make sense to put them in the courtyard of the senior center and then have seniors drive up there so they can hang out in the courtyard and be cool. So maybe there's some other way we can do this, but we're still exploring it.
okay, well, I'm thinking back to the meeting, I believe it was on the 27th of September, that it was unbearably hot in the building, and there was problem, the air conditioning could not keep up with cooling that building. And so I think that my request is that we put in that we look at, making the improvements so that we don't have to send our residents to neighboring cities during excessive heat and cold periods.
I have no response to that. I mean, I appreciate the intent, 100%. It's the same intent that we've tried to review, but we've not yet found a workable way to accomplish that, even looking at the technology that could help with that, but there's consequences of using that technology. I know that air conditioning for the activity center to the level that it would prevent, the impacts of 115-degree weather is exorbitant. So, I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm sorry. If you want us to hire like an air whatever consultant, put aside some money to do that, maybe we could do that. But I apologize. I don't know what the answer to your query is.
I got a solution. Let's go ahead and add that discussion to the Municipal Facilities Committee. At this time, the next meeting, we'll add it to the work plan. Councilmember Pennington?
I would encourage you to also have the Emergency Management Committee and the Emergency Management Director be a part of that conversation, regardless of what committee you assign it to. There are regional resources. I know you don't want to send the citizens to another city, but this area, this zone is Zone 3 in terms of emergency response, has a lot of overlapping regional resources that they actually plan and work together, these emergency managers do, in this zone and as a part of the King County Emergency Management Center. So there's bigger plans out there, and I appreciate that we want to have some stuff within the city, but it's really important to have our emergency manager be a part of these conversations so that perhaps then she can give you some insight as to what the regional approach is to that.
Yes, Councilmember Nutting and Deputy Mayor Buxton, those are your committees you chair. You can work with the work plan on that. All right. Councilmember Harris.
I would just add that there needs to be a space, such that it can hold a large number of people, that has proper HVAC under any and all circumstances. And as part of that, I would also say that has a nice AV and video system as well.
Well, then they can include those in their discussions.
It's got to be bigger than this.
Let's go ahead and move on to board and committee reports. We're going to start off with Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier in the week, on Monday, the Arts Commission met and rolled out their plan for the year, and we've got another packed summer and spring and fall of fun stuff ahead, so looking forward to that and looking forward to supporting the reallocation of the $50,000 for the Arts Commission. It'll be well spent. This evening, I chaired the Environment Committee, and we rolled out, in our committees, we're rolling out our work plan. A lot of good stuff to come, some progress reports in our February meeting, and CIP project updates every other month. So, yeah, that concludes my remarks.
Moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to first of all apologize to the public for for having this executive session at the beginning of the meeting and for the executive session itself. You will find that this was a horrible waste of public money. It'll be thousands of dollars, I'm sure, and I disagree with my colleagues in that every dollar you spend on something emotional is a dollar that you don't have to spend on something real. And so the 3, 4, 5,000, whatever it's going to be, is going to be someone you could not help for something legit. And I'm thinking back to one of my son's favorite graphic novels where one character says, I'm not in here with you. You guys are also in here with me. And anybody under the age of 50 knows about Watchmen, hopefully. And I say that because we have to be tolerant and understand one another and appreciate one another's value. I don't think people realize that the average age of people in Des Moines is 39 and dropping. It is not represented at these meetings, but you have to have people with different viewpoints. And if you don't, then you're screwing the future, okay? You have to be able to disagree and be, and push. And that there's just no other way around it. I found, watching these meetings for 15 or so years, that you can, there's a guy who worked for the government, he calls the terror of deference. You can be so nice and so worried about hurting people's feelings that you don't tell truth to power. And he was speaking of nuclear weapons, but it could be here. The marina has had many different design proposals over the years, and I'll just close tonight. I was going to talk about the port and so on, but the deal is you go to Home Depot and they've got 3 power drills, and you think that's all there is. Well, no, there are like 50 different power drills out there. It's just that you're there, and so that narrows your perception. The truth is the city has had people bring in beautiful design ideas for the marina and the downtown that bear no resemblance to what Skylab put on the table. And the reason that you want to have a public process, that the crowdsourcing and so on, and the reason that I focus on history is that I think that if the public saw the ideas from University of Washington in 2008, 2011, and before that, they would go, wow, because they provide exactly the solutions that everybody's talked about, but they're in totally different places, and they would make people happy. And that's why we need the Public Planning Commission, so that you can have younger people go out and Google around and look at this stuff and think about options that are not the 3 power drills or the 1 power drill, the 1 developer for parcel A, the 1 proposal that we have seen from Skylab. That has narrowed everybody's vision to the point where people think those are the only possibilities. They're not. There have been several people who looked at this and saw something totally different and that addresses all of the things that people have wanted so desperately for so long. And my last sentence or two is that I don't respond to desperation or bleeding. I respond to data, because we make bad decisions in this town and have for decades because people go, oh my, we must have this. And it's like, that's why people make the bad decision. Thank you.
Councilmember Pennington.
I just bought a power drill. I guess I should have talked to you first. But
Should have.
anyway, for those that came and spoke tonight and shared your feelings and visions and views, thank you. You know, I have said this and I will continue to say it. When you come and you talk in person and you have that connection, we have that connection. Certainly I do. I won't speak for the rest of the council, but and that's important. And if you want an example, is just look at the ordinance that we just passed. So that is because of folks showing up and telling their story, and you know, it's important. So that's important to do that. I attended the Des Moines Marine Association a couple of nights ago, the Environmental Committee this evening, which you got a report on, and staff, thank you for the presentations. Those are great, very informative. And the vision that was forward in 2008 with the University of Washington, I remember this specifically, was about a 75-foot wall of buildings along Marine View Drive from one end to the other. I'm not sure that's the vision that we have for Des Moines. But anyway, thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Steinmetz.
I'll try.
I waited till you were choking on water.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll try to keep it short since the cold medicine is really wearing off at the moment. I attended the first Sound Cities Association PIC, Public Interest Committee, last night, and I will be the council representative on that. It is a large body of the various cities in King County, and they address bigger issues that are facing the county as a whole. And the idea behind it is to create sort of a counterbalance to Seattle, King County, and all the little guys over here. So it's going to be a very interesting process. I've got a lot to learn. Deputy Mayor Buxton was the previous representative on that, and I appreciate her taking the time to explain it to me, and she was there last night while I was observing most of it. But it looks like a great opportunity to get ideas from other cities, to have some interaction with them, but also to, sort of make sure that our voice is being heard at the broader regional level. Seems way back when now, but on New Year's Eve, I attended the Burning Boat, and we haven't had a meeting since then, so I get to talk about that. It was a great event. Lots of money raised, which was the fundamental purpose of it. It was, there were 3 good food trucks there. There was a nice little beer garden, lots of people, and really, I think it was a great start for what I hope will be an annual event. I think it was really something special. I want to kind of address there's been an outcry for some sort of a public marina planning commission, and I really don't understand that. It creates another layer of bureaucracy by an unelected body that presumably would be appointed by the mayor or the council. And I think it's much more important that the people making the decisions on the marina are the ones who are going to stand for election, and that's us up here. I appreciate all of the input that everybody's given. I think there have been a lot of good suggestions. I can assure you that your voices are being heard, and I think you'll find modifications are being listened to, being suggested, and being considered fully and fairly. And so, the idea of adding another bureaucratic layer to this process, I just don't understand, particularly when it doesn't represent a fundamental change, because it would come from the council or the mayor. I don't understand why anybody would see that as some sort of a panacea. We're not going to get those 30-somethings on that planning commission that's been talked about. So really, I think it's been considered, but I don't think it's something worth doing. And when you stop and think about what it really looks like, it's not going to solve any problems. You need to, we are the ones who are responsible. And if you don't like what we do, there's an election coming, and things can change. And that's where the rubber meets the road. So other than that, I don't think I have anything more to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Moving on to Councilmember Oxiger.
Hopefully I'm not stepping on the deputy mayor or the mayor's toes on this, but we did have a meeting of the Transportation Committee tonight, and one of the things that we did on the work plan is to begin taking a serious look at the last mile, how we can integrate transportation in the city to get people to and from the light rail. And I think that's an extremely positive step. the second thing is, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Councilmember Steinmetz, that I think the outcry that we're seeing right now over the sudden appearance of the hotel in the marina is, you know, we sit here and say we don't like to be surprised. And I think the public has been surprised by this whole process. And I think the way to get around that is to involve the public. And I don't think it's a bureaucratic layer or anything else. It's simply communicating with the public. And I wholeheartedly endorse the idea of a Marina Development Committee. And also, I'm looking forward to the reestablishment of the Citizens Advisory Committee, which is part of the municipal code. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So since our last meeting, it does seem a long time ago, I participated in about 35 engagements with colleagues, staff, citizens, boards, and committees, and we discussed and advocated with regard to economic development, our city vision and mission, senior events, nonprofit support of nonprofits in our community, regional issues, growth management and housing, trafficking issues, and public safety. So I thoroughly enjoyed my community. We had a lot of fun things. Many of my colleagues here participated in many of the things that I did as well. Some highlights. I appreciated especially the holiday events such as the boat parade, burning boat, the polar plunge, which I thought those people were crazy. It was a privilege to serve in these events alongside many of those here, in particular the mayor in a dry suit corralling a bunch of crazy people in swimsuits on New Year's Day. That was pretty interesting. Special thanks during the holiday season to our first responders, our PD, and our nonprofits working surrounding trafficking and behavioral health issues all across our community and local region here. There's been an emphasis nationwide in regard to behavioral health issues. It's coming down the pike in every state and in every municipality, and I just feel like we have been pioneers in this thinking and allocating our time and resources to try and brainstorm and figure out how we can move forward in supporting people. And I'm really proud of our staff and our department and the work that we're doing out in the community. So I do want to just respond to a couple of comments. I do respond to people in emotional crisis because adults in this community are adults and they're not children. If people are in crisis and are responding emotionally to something very challenging and difficult, I'm going to respect that. Like our friend who couldn't hold herself together very well tonight. So I don't apologize for my response to that emotion. In some ways, it's my greatest strength, and it's some ways it is my greatest weakness. I can be moved, but I can be moved. See what I mean? And so you can compel me into response. And sometimes maybe I should hold my ground more. But this action that we took tonight, this was in response to a community that is under challenge. And they were responding emotionally and compelled me to respond emotionally. And there is nothing wrong with that. So it's not that I don't disrespect data gathering at all. I think that that's wise. But responding to people, adults, who are responding emotionally is reasonable as well. And you're going to find that. You're going to find an ear in me, and you will find that in me. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. I'll make this short as we draw near and no extension will be needed. The only thing I'm going to say is about the January 26th meeting. I want to challenge our residents to watch the meeting, attend or listen. I want them to take the opportunity to comment, but I ask them to think holistically. I want them to have an open mind. I want them to think of Des Moines as a whole and not just the backyard. It's gonna be important. What history has told us is we haven't done that. And that's why we look like 1962 downtown. There's some opportunities, economic and otherwise, we have to look at. Not a thing has been decided. But we're moving toward that, and everybody's gonna have an opportunity to participate. But it's that kind of attitude we need when we all come to the January 26th meeting. Not a predetermined factor, not dealing or swallowing the misinformation that's been out there. But listen to this, hear what has to be said, and we'll go forward from there. We all want one thing, and that's we want the Des Moines to be the best city it can be. But it doesn't happen if we don't come in with an open mind. The truth is, in the past, in our city, it's been closed, and that's been part of our problem. As mayor, I just have to be honest and straightforward and say that. That's what I've read in the history book. The marina itself almost never happened. A lot of people don't know this. In the late 60s, it was actually, in a Superior Court decision, they decided not to build the marina. But it was, and the judge thought the residents that opposed it were crazy. He actually called them stupid. And he said that you may have won, but the city most likely had lost. Unfortunately, Supreme Court decision was overruled, and not one of us today would disagree that the marina is one of the best assets in our town. And this is the thing, is we all want the greater good, but we've got to be thinking about it. We have the opportunity right now. If we don't explore all these opportunities and look at them carefully, this is the moment to do it. We've worked so hard to get to this point again where we can do it fiscally and so forth. And it's an important time. That's all I can stress to the residents here. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? 7-0. Everybody have a nice evening. And the next meeting will be obviously January 26th.